And welcome to my tutorial for row number 2 of my chart A for my Lasa Shawl, which you can see here. We are working currently on this section here, the one with the little kind of feathery V's on it. The edge comes later, so this is what we're working on here currently. And this is a version of the chart that you're likely to see some of in the pattern itself. And we're working on row number 2, which is here. If these symbols don't mean anything to you, pop back a video or two and I'll explain them all and I demonstrate them all in situ. So you'll be able to have a look at them in the pattern there, just to do a bit of a recap. So row number 2 here starts off with my 2 grey symbols. So once again, I'm beginning with a decrease. Now bear in mind, folks, you don't use the V on top of on the side of your stitch. Ignore that. That doesn't get used. So if you're one stitch up, check, you may be very well using that line there instead of starting off with this one in the fabric itself. This is the one you're meant to be using, the one in the fabric. So we do our Tunisian simple stitch 2 together, our 2 stitch decrease like so. And you can see now, you can see the decreases piling on top of each other. That's the first one you did. That there's now the second one you did. So you get this nice little flying duck formation sort of in your fabric itself. So that's your 2 there. Now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Tunisian simple stitches to do. So we'll do those into the next 5 lines along. Go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Simple enough. Then we have a yarn over, and then we have another Tunisian simple stitch here. Of course, each of the rows relates directly to each other because they are all stuck to each other on the fabric itself. So this Tunisian simple stitch here is actually worked into the yarn over on the previous row, on row 1 there. So we'll do this yarn over and then we'll tackle this simple stitch. That yarn over, of course, is worked independently because it's meant to make an eyelet. So that's it in place. And then we've got 2 choices here for your eyelet. You can either dive straight into the hole there, you can see my finger through, just pop straight through, yarn over, and draw back a loop. You can see this here, the one wiggling, that's the loop that has drawn that eyelet out and made it into a nice big hole like so. So if you want something that's a little bit more clear in your fabric, if you're using a thicker yarn and you're worried about the eyelets not showing up, that's a really, really good way of ensuring that they do hold open in the fabric itself when it's being worn. If you want something a little more subtle, or if you're using a yarn that's crazy blockable like pure silk, your best bet actually is to work into just the yarn over itself. So if I focus here, you can see this little window, that little diagonal there, it's really, really clear on mine. Sometimes it can be up in the corner of your window like a tiny cobweb on the window pane, like you can see it there. So one way or another, find it, pick it, and draw your yarn over through that instead. That will it'll open up the eyelet a little bit, but it'll make it a little bit more subtle. So depending on your taste, either method is absolutely fine. On this, because my yarn's a bit thicker than the one I used for the actual shawl itself, I'm going to make my eyelet nice and big so you guys can see it clearly. So that's my yarn over used to create a Tunisian simple stitch. My very next symbol along is a Tunisian knit stitch. This is a nice way of keeping yourself in line. It should be on top of the previous rows. If it isn't, something has gone awry here. You've miscounted somewhere along the way. Most likely forgotten your yarn over. I find that's the thing that sets me off. So what we do is have a look and we find the previous row's line, which is this guy here. Snuggle through. This hole's nice and big. Pop out the back for our knit stitch. Yarn over and draw back through again. On the other side of our knit stitch, we have another Tunisian simple stitch that uses our yarn over. So I find that hole right there. It's the hole in the middle. That's the guy. Then we do our yarn over as specified on the pattern itself here. And our 5 Tunisian simple stitches will bring us close to the end. So I'll find my next 5 here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like so. Now we've got our Tunisian simple stitch 3 together. It's a nice big decrease there. In this case, we've got 1, 2, and our eyelet. So I pop in there. I go into the yarn over, like so. Draw back through all 3 of those. Do my yarn over for the next row along. And then I have my 3 simple stitches at the end which miraculously are there. So we go 1, 2, 3. And we find the chain from the previous row. If you have difficulty finding that, by the way, just take the tips of your fingers, your finger and your thumb, and draw into a diagonal as if you're drawing it out towards the edge of a page, like so. The very, very last thing that you snag your fingers on is invariably, I guarantee you, is always the chain. It's just sitting there waiting to be picked. So if it is hiding, or if you're not sure which loop, it's not this one in here, it's one right on the corner, like so. So I'm going to pop in there, yarn over, draw through a final loop like that. Now, because I've been fiddling with it, the edge isn't quite as neat, but it will be when we do the return pass here. So once again, as with every row of the chart A, which is the main body of this Lasa shawl, what we need to do is go yarn over through 1 loop, and then repeatedly yarn over through 2 all the way home. So just chug away on that with a little frill. And very soon you find that your fabric actually builds up quite rapidly on this as well, which is nice. It's a lovely thing about Tunisian. Because you're using thin yarn and a big hook, it builds fast, and it also doesn't cost very much to make. And because it's Tunisian, which is quite dense to begin with, you don't end up with a flimsy looking fabric. You end up with something with real kind of density and heft to it. So it doesn't feel like you're floating around in a cobweb that could disappear at any minute. It's a nice rustic feel to it. Here we go, yarn over through 2 all the way home there. And you will notice, if we look at this here, you do indeed have some eyelets starting to show through. There's 2 there, and the next rows are slightly further out, there and there. So that's the start of our V, and you can see it with the eyelets on the pattern itself. They go outwards, as do these. So there you go, that's chart A. That's everything you need to do chart A, folks. Oh, sorry, I banged the camera. Typical of me after 7 minutes. Okay, well look at, I'll see you in the very next video where I'll be going through some of the après chart A stuff. So I hope that I'll see you in that. Thanks a million for watching, everybody.